Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Talks series at Serendipity Arts Festival. As many of you are aware, SAF is one of South Asia's largest multidisciplinary festivals that bring together performative, visual, and culinary practices from India and beyond. We are very pleased to present today's discussion titled Best Practices Navigating Intellectual Property Rights in the Music Industry. This panel explores the complex landscape of intellectual property rights, fair practices, and licensing in the music industry. Industry experts will discuss current challenges in music copyright, addressing issues such as fair compensation, digital streaming rights, and the impact of new technologies. The conversation aims to shed light on best practices and potential solutions for a more equitable music ecosystem. Moderating this discussion is Rafael Pereira, Managing Partner Tinnets, Executive Trustee India Music Exchange. Joining him on the panel are Rakesh Nigam, CEO of IPRS, Atul Churamani, Industry Veteran and Managing Director of Turnkey Music and Publishing, Mayur Puri, Songwriter, Actor, Film Director, and IPRS Board Member. Together, they will unpack the challenges and opportunities within the music rights landscape. Over to you, Rafael.
Thank you, Vidisha. Thank you. All right. Before we jump into the panel, can we get a sense of who's in the room? So, how many musicians in here? All right. And how many artists, performing arts artists, and from any discipline? How many artists here? Producers, curators. All right. And venue owners, programmers, bookers. All right. All in one. Yeah. Minal, you are the audience. All right. How many of you love music? Okay, great. We have. All right. So unanimous show of hands there. Everyone loves music, but I'll jump straight into it. I've heard terms like music, songs, masters, sound recordings, literary works, musical works. To an lay audience, it's just music. So what are these? What are these other terms? What do they mean? Why are they important? Maybe we can jump straight into that. And Atul, since you're to my left, we'll go clockwise. What's the difference, and why do we get into these terms?
Okay. So the thing is, there's music. Music is music, right? And really, music and what goes into music is only three things. There's a composition, there's a lyric, and there's a recording, right? So there was one artist in the room. You said you're a singer, right? Can you sing a song that's never been composed? Impossible, right? Something that's not there, what are you going to sing? So the basic thing is that music starts with a composition and a lyric. And we always say this. There was a movie, Refugee, I don't know which one. Okay. So Anu Malik and Javed Saab get together in a room. Anu composes the song, Javed Saab writes the lyrics. It's called Nadi Panchiya, Panchi Nadiya. Right. And the idea is that the song becomes a super hit. You want everyone on the planet to hear this song. So this whole thing about copyrights is actually common sense. If you think of copyright as common sense, you'll understand it very quickly. So if you want a song to be heard across the world, and there is one room in a house in Bandra or Juhu or whatever, where these guys have composed and written a song, what is logically the next thing you're going to do? You'll record the song, right? You have to have a recording that people can hear. So they call Sonu and Alka and they get into a studio and they record a song. One song recorded in one studio in Andheri in Bombay. How do you listen to it in Japan and Germany? What do you do next? Simple as you have to make copies. In the old days when people like us joined the business, you made LPs and cassettes and CDs and you kind of, made your copies. Today there is a computer, there's a file on a computer which goes out to many computers. So what are you doing? You're making copies. That's where copyright comes from. It's you copy the damn song, and that's where it originates from. Because if you don't have a copy, nobody can hear the song.
So maybe then to Rakesh, we've with who has the copyright? What is the copyright? Is there one copyright? Are there many copyrights? I know it sounds a bit dumb coming from a lawyer asking you this question, but I think we'll set the stage with just the basics, because we're talking about best practices of navigating intellectual property in the music industry. So let's talk about how many copyrights are there, who owns the copyright, and how does it kind of transition, how does it flow from one person to the next?
You know, as Atul beautifully explained it, I'll just take a small example also of how copyright starts with you when you are actually studying. Everyone does not realize it, but it starts from studying. You know, when you are a kid in the school, when you study and you go to write your exams, what does the teacher do or anyone do in a principal do in your school? Is that one student, when he writes his exam paper, no other student can copy that, because that's the thing that you are copying. So actually copyright emancipates from there itself, from the student days when you are a live student sitting and writing your exam, that no one can copy what you have written. Exactly what copyright is all about actually. If you convert that into very simple basic languages, that it's someone's creation and no one can own or use it without his license or his specific approval. In business terms, we may call it as a license or an assigned or anything, but in simple terms, it is no one can use someone else's material without his express approval. In
Not me.
there are various copyrights. One,
एक बार बात ही कर लो ना, खत्म हो जाएगा. Just talk.
So you were saying, and going back to what Atul said, he said there's the lyric, there's the composition, and then there's the recording, right?
yeah.
We're listening to the recording in most cases. So all of these have copyright?
all the three are actually separate copyrights, because if you talk about a literary work can be many things, it can be lyrics, what Mayur writes, it can be story, it can be dialogues, and it can be
Dialogues which
a
Mayur writes.
screenplay. Okay, so all of this comes under literary work. What we specifically deal with specifically with the music business IPR does is actually in the lyrics portion of it. Second is the compositions, what you said, you make a dhun, when everyone says how people make a tune, and then the tune gets recorded along with the lyrics and the singer sings it, then you create a recording. So dhun is also very important. It's what is called in common terminology as a musical work. And musical work does not mean only just song portion. People just assume musical works to be only songs, music. When you enjoy a movie, just try and enjoy a movie without background music being there. You will never be able to. If you see Jaws, when the shark comes, there's a specific music which comes, or when you see Satya Pe Satta, when Amitabh Bachchan duplicate walks in, you have a specific music which comes here, or Sholay. So, that is background music is also music, and which everyone enjoys. That is also music. So, these are all things which are copyrighted.
I think a beautiful example, and a more recent example of one of the songs changing its context or changing the context of the scene is a song by A.R. Rahman that's resurfaced in Animal as the villain's entry, I believe, right? So I think coming to films like those, Mayur, we've spoken about now how copyright exists for the lyrics as in the literary work, for the composition as the musical work, and for the recording of those as the sound recording. But coming to the ownership of these copyrights, so how does it start when take us to through your creative process, where you retain copyright, where you choose to give it away, and how it differs in both scenarios.
Okay. First of all, thank you all very much for being here. This is the most important discussion happening in the entire world right now. I'm telling you, and you are a part of it, so be proud of that. It is important because the music industry and the copyright, our humanity is at stake right now. When we are talking, when we are having these talks and discussions, there is AI threat looming. There is many things which are happening. and copyright is a human right. So we are at the precipice of finding out whether as human beings we are going to take the right calls or not in the next 5 years probably, or 10 years. Are we going to make the correct policies? Are we going to? So it's a very important discussion. So let me just table that thought first. Secondly, coming back to my process, copyright, I did not know anything. Like most songwriters in India, I was just married to my work and I loved that, and I didn't really understand the business part of it too much, because artists are not supposed to understand business, and somehow it's looked down upon you. If you understand business, then you are not a pure artist, you're not a great artist. A great artist doesn't care about money, doesn't care about business. That's the perception that people have.
It's the opposite that they say for lawyers. If you understand the business, you're a bad lawyer, you know, Chuba?
Yeah,
That's why I'm asking you all these questions, so I can understand.
So for me, when I understood, when I started, when you start learning about things is only after, the value of justice that person can understand who has faced injustice. So जिसके साथ अन्याय होता है वही न्याय की कीमत जानता है, वही जानता है कि न्याय मिलना चाहिए. So when I was exploited, then I realized that no, I must educate myself, I must learn about copyright. And when I learned about copyright, it was amazing. When you read everything which the governments have decided across the world and the copyright acts of various countries, when you read it, it's a document that will stir humanity inside you. It will make you so happy. Because in India also, the general understanding of copyright is that the copyright is created the moment the creator creates something. You don't have to take approval, you don't have to take consent, you don't have to tell anybody. When the moment you create something, that's the moment your copyright is born. What we need a birth certificate for that baby. What you have written or what you have composed, if you've created or you've written a script or you have a story, you already have created copyright, but you don't have a birth certificate for that. So you got to ensure that you go to, if you're a writer, you go to Screenwriters Association. If you're a songwriter, you register your song, you publish it, you register with IPRS, you register so that you've created a birth certificate for it. So you got to understand that you have created a copyright, but how are you going to exploit it? Now, I don't like this word exploit, because exploit is always used in a business context. How do you utilize it? People talk about fair use. We'll talk about that also. Yeah. Use is always fair. It is the abuse which is unfair. So there is lots of things that you need to understand about copyright, but the simple thing is that if you have created something, you own it. It's as much of a property, as much of a tangible property as a mango tree. Suppose you put, or a coconut tree. In Goa, what coconut tree? Let's take that example, right? If you have planted, or if you have 5 coconut trees in your backyard, every fruit that comes out of that coconut tree is yours. But I've had these arguments कि सर मान लो आपने अपने आंगन के अंदर एक कोकोनट ट्री लगाया, लेकिन उसका एक डाली मेरे कोर्टयार्ड में आया और उधर से एक कोकोनट मेरा गार्डन में गिरा, तो वो कोकोनट मेरा हुआ कि नहीं? So people have these stupid arguments about copyright.
So to put things in perspective, let's say you've composed a song for a film and you've assigned this song over to a film producer. Now, the coconut falling in your neighbor's garden example, when this film producer is producing a sequel, does he need you anymore? Can he re-record this song?
It depends on the contract. If you have done an agreement and if you have given them the permission to use it in perpetuity and again repeated use, if you have given that permission, if it is expressly stated if it is not stated, it is assumed that they don't have the permission.
So
the assumption is that you don't have the right. If you want the right, it has to be expressly written. Am I right, sir? Yes. If you want the right, then the producer has to expressly write it in the agreement and take it. Otherwise, the law assumes that you have not taken the right.
Alright, all clear till then. So now my next question is, Atul, what came first, the chicken or the egg? The lyric and the composition, or did the recording come first? Because to use the word of exploitation, we've always heard, and we deal with music, right? We know music as the recording. That's the music in the most tangible form to a normal consumer. We don't necessarily buy music books today. We don't necessarily look at musical compositions in notation form today. So what really came first in India and with the Indian music industry? How did that development start?
So, as we were saying, it all starts from the composition and the lyrics, right? But of course, there's the business angle to it. And if you look at the business angle, so just to explain to everyone, the composition and lyrics are controlled for business, call it exploitation or utilization. They are controlled by a music publisher. So the music publisher deals with composers and lyric writers. So Anu Malik and Javed Akhtar are not performers, they're not singers, right? They compose and they write. So they sign with publishers. Sonu Nigam and Alka Yagnik are singers. That business is done by a record label. So there's composition, lyrics done by publishers, and there is the singing part of it, the recording part of it, which is done by a music label. And these are two divisions in the music business globally. And if you look at your big international companies, Universal, Sony, Warner, you've all heard of them, right? In the music business itself, Sony has two businesses under one roof. One is called, in India, it's called Sony Music Entertainment India, which is the record label, and Sony Music Publishing. Universal has Universal Music Publishing and Universal Music Group, which is the recording part of it. There is Warner Chappell, which is the record label, and Warner Music, which is the record label, and Warner Chappell, which is the publishing company. Because these are two different businesses. Okay? And for you to understand,
And sometimes they are not in the
They're
same
not
line,
they're
in
not
sync. They are
they're-
contrary to each other also.
they have an inherent
Conflict of interest, yeah.
Right? Because if you look at a recording, if there's only one recording of a song in the world, the label that owns that recording will earn all the money of every consumer who's consuming that recording. Yes? Simple, right? But if there are two recordings, then the audience gets divided. If there are three recordings, the audience gets further divided. However, for the publisher who's making money off recordings, there is a royalty that's coming back to the composer, author, and publisher from the recording. The more recordings in the market, the more money you'll make. As publishers, as composers, and authors, the more money you'll make. So, because of this inherent conflict, all music entities keep the two businesses separate. So, there's a label business which involves recordings, and there's a publishing business which involves the composer and lyric writer. And to come back to what Rafael is getting at, so when the music industry in India started, it started in 1901. The first record label that was set up, the first music entity set up in India was in 1901, which was set up by the gramophone company called EMI. Oh, sorry. I could hear myself. The first company by EMI out of England, their first office anywhere in the world was in Calcutta, in Dum Dum. And that was called in those days HMV, right? You've all heard of HMV, EMI, HMV, the Gramophone Company of India. So from 1901, they set up in India to do recordings and distribute recordings in India. And they were a monopoly till 1932, till a company in Calcutta was formed called the Indian Record Manufacturing Company, who also was a record company. In 1969, an international company called Polydor, which today is called Universal Music, they set up in India as a record label. In 1982, CBS came in. CBS today is called Sony Music. They were a record label. And then we had our homegrown guys in the 80s who came in, T-Series, Tips, Venus. They were all record labels. They were focused on creating recordings, film music rights were being acquired from film producers, and the whole business developed as a label business. And because in 1901 there were no publishers, no publishing company, there were publishing companies internationally, they did not set up in India. The record label set up in India. So it was all record label, record label, record label. And you've all heard stories about how the old composers, R.D. Burman and Lakshmikant Pal, they were stealing English songs, right? You can go to YouTube and look at dozens of these videos. They stole. But they weren't stealing. They were doing cover recordings, which are perfectly legitimate if you've got the permission. Now in 1950, where would you get permission from if the copyright owner is not sitting here? And how would that guy know that there's a recording of his composition being made in India when you were still sending telegrams to communicate? You understand? So because you had no publisher present in India who would license those recordings, we all make fun of it now, saying that, oh, wo chori kiya, chori kiya, chori kiya. But today, when you have Pretty Woman, which appears in, what is that film? That Shankar, Kal Ho Na Ho, right? It was licensed because you had the internet, you had digital, you knew the rights owners. So the business is, that's the way it works.
You have to change the mics again. You have to use one mic.
And today, you're in that business, right? You're not running a record label yourself. You're acting as a publisher. You represent a certain amount of repertoire, both Indian and international. And I believe even Netflix and Amazon Productions will reach out to you and say, "Hi Atul, can we use this song in this film, or can we use this song in this advertisement?" How is that process changed from what you're just stating, and who is that earning revenue for? Is it these publishers? Are the songwriters earning anything? Can you give us a bit of insight into how the money flows from used to and now how it flows, and how maybe songwriters are benefited?
So again, if you go back to the origin of a song is created by, let's say, two people. A composition and lyric created by two people. A publisher doesn't even exist, right? So the publisher actually owns nothing. The ownership comes from the composer and writer. They in turn choose to work with a business entity that will help exploit it and earn money for the composition and recording. Now they could license it, which means that temporarily that person can represent the right, or they can assign the right, which means they have sold the right. It's about having a house and either renting it out and earning money off rental income, or selling it. Okay, assignment is sale, licensing is rental. So that's how it works. We as publishers do not own anything. We represent the composition and lyrics of catalogs and of writers, and we license them out. Now, India, like every other country, we are in transitional phase thanks to technology. So what used to be only cinema in films has now, and then serials on television, has now morphed into many series and films on OTT platforms. So there's a lot more work that's happening, a lot more production work that's happening. So people are reaching out, and Mayur will know best, and Rakesh also has been dealing with this, where in the old days for films, the producer used to buy, he used to take an assignment or a works for hire, he used to employ people to do the work, to own the recordings, and then he used to sell them to the record labels. Today it's changing, where they understand that there is a license that can be used. So if you want a 30-second of a great dance song, you want to use Dua Lipa's Levitating in a disco scene, it doesn't have to be created at a high cost with Shankar Ehsaan Loy, right? You can just license the song for a fee.
You said something really interesting, and I want to bring in Rakesh onto this side. Assignment versus licensing. And you mentioned that songwriters like Mayur, and Mayur spoke about this earlier as well, would assign their copyright to a producer. So invariably, one would think that songwriters, once they assign something, they have nothing to gain from that copyright anymore, right? So Rakesh, is that the case? Once I've assigned my copyright, and I believe songwriters have been doing this for years in India, right? With the dominance of the producers, the dominance of the labels, the songwriters have assigned their copyright. But have songwriters been able to capitalize on the wide exposure that copyright is receiving through new media today?
Very interesting things. How India as a country has transformed. In the last, I would say, 12 years has been defining moment. Prior to 2012, all the rights, as you rightly said, used to be assigned by the author composers to the film producer, because in India traditionally, if you move back pre-COVID era, prior to 90-95% of our music was film music. What has changed in the last few years is, in the last 2-3 years is that, you have got lot more non-film music which is started getting playing. So, it's reached level of 25 to 30%, non-film music I started getting into. So prior to that, it was all film music prior to 12. And film producers used to get everything assigned to them, and authors had no statutory right to royalty unless he had written. And no author, composer would have written anything for that. After, in 12, what happened is, when all this advent of new technologies and everything happened, author composers started, we are not getting our rightful share of royalties, because music now had a life beyond the films also. You had ringtones, you had ringback tones, you had digital music, you had greeting cards, everything coming through. So they started, okay, we should have started getting royalties. And when they said, okay, you do not have a right, this movement was fought by IPRS's chairman Javed Akhtar, and in the parliament he got this change that an author composer can assign the copyright to a producer or to any person, but that assignment cannot have that he is transferring his right of equal share of royalty. So there are two things. Mayur can write a lyric, give it to Atul for turnkey, 100% of the copyright. But the law says that Mayur will retain his right to equal share of royalty. For his literary work, he will continue to get 50% royalty, equal share means. So that is what has changed, transformed it. So now authors and composers are seeing a huge benefit in terms of that, what's happening in the universe.
Basically, I'm sorry, I'm going to butt in, but the language of the Copyright Act that we have now, as amended in 2012, it's very beautiful. It says that the right to royalty is inalienable from the author. So if I'm the author and if I've created something, my right to royalty cannot be alienated from me. It cannot be taken away from me by any force in the world. I myself cannot give that right away. I cannot say, okay, and see, please understand the spirit of the law. What it is trying to say is that the spirit of law and justice is more important than any understanding between any two entities. Tomorrow I say, I need money, I'm very poor, and Atulji can come and slap me 10 times every day and he can give me 1 crore of rupees at the end of the month. I'm happy to get slapped and get 10 slaps every day. But the law of the land will not allow it. The government will not allow it because it is inhuman to slap somebody. You understand? So even if I'm happy to do that agreement, it's not allowed to have that agreement. Right? So that is what we need to understand, that copyright is all about consent. We all understand consent now. After the Me Too movement, everybody knows what consent is, right?
I mean, some of us knew before also, but
I'm assuming that now at least everybody knows. It is about consent, and consent at every stage. Consent at every single stage. That if I have a song, if I have written this song, somebody needs to take permission to put it in a film. If you want to use it outside the film, then where? Can I play it on radio? Can I play it on TV? Can I make more copies of it? Can I sell it in Azerbaijan? Can I sell it in Turkey? These are all different rights. There's a whole bundle of rights with copyright. It's called neighboring rights. Atul sir will explain more. But you got to have the consent, and you got to have the understanding that you cannot just buy one and assume that you've got a package of everything.
before we get into neighboring rights and other sorts of rights, I have a question, but also to the audience, if you have questions at any point, just put your hands up and we'll pass a mic around to you. What's the difference? Rakesh mentioned a key milestone, which was the Copyright Act changed in 2012, right? What's the difference that it has personally made to you in your life? Was there anything that you received that was equitable before 2012, Mayur, and what's it like today? And maybe Atul, you can answer that, and Rakesh also. Have the floodgates opened for creators is what I'm asking also.
Yeah, we had not heard of the word royalty. I did not even know that it exists. I did not even know that it is my right and I can get it. But after IPRS restarted its functioning, after the restructure of IPRS, after Javed Saab became chairman and Rakeshji was his CEO, and after these guys started working in IPRS, I think in 2017 we had distributed, IPRS had distributed royalty of what, 46 crores annually. Okay, and this year, sir, how much?
We have done last year 23-24 we have done 500 crores, out of which around 300 crores plus was distributed to authors and composers alone.
So imagine where is 46 crores, and in 5 years it has gone to 550 crores. So 10 times. And this is not really the market potential of India, the Indian royalty potential, the market is in thousands of crores actually. We are still not being able to monetize it. We are still not being able to get the correct rightful royalties that we should get. Radio stations are not there's lots of people who are not paying, and I don't want to sit here and take all the names because I say all the names and then I get into trouble. So I don't want to take the names, but outside I'll tell you who are not paying. But yeah, there are lots of people who are not paying. And inadvertently you also are a part of it. You have weddings, you don't pay us. You use music for 5 days in the weddings, you do cocktail parties, and you do devotional ceremonies, and we are not allowed to collect royalties for devotional programs, right?
But Atul said something lovely earlier about common sense, right? I think this is a point of common sense. We'll come to this point, because I love what both of you have said about the Copyright Act. I'm so proud. The lyricist finds the beauty in the Copyright Act here on this panel, and what you said earlier, Atul, with copyright being common sense. We'll come to the areas which are not following common sense, but I think we reached. And if we could pass one mic over there, I'll come to you in a. Or why don't you go ahead with your question, and I want to come back, and I want to come back and specifically ask, when we are saying you need to pay or they need to pay, I want to get into who needs to pay and why.
Yeah,
please.
sure.
Yeah, so not sure this is the right time for that question, but curious to know why Taylor Swift actually re-recorded everything, and what was actually the reason for that?
So the power of maybe Atul, if you can take that, and I'll frame the question a bit more. It sounds like traditionally we've given more weightage to the masters, in India at least. What is the value of publishing, and what can you do as a publishing owner? What can you do?
In context of what happened to Taylor Swift. So what happened to Taylor Swift was that she signed with the label, they recorded all the stuff, and they owned all the rights. So when she became bigger in stature as an artist, she felt that it was unfair that the label owned the rights to something that she had done. So she wanted the rights, and they said no. So she said, fair enough, the compositions are all mine or pretty much hers. So she went out and re-recorded them. So that's one of the copyrights. The recording right, the right to record that song. You can record it today as a first recording, or you can record it again as a re-recording. So she wanted to own the rights of the songs that she created. So if she couldn't get the rights to the original one she had done when she was 16 or 17 or whatever, she did it again a few years later.
हमारे इंडिया में भी ऐसा हुआ था, बहुत सारे गाने पुरानी पिक्चरों के बहुत फेमस थे, फिर बाद में दूसरा नया म्यूजिक कंपनी आया, वो लोग वो गाना यूज नहीं कर सकते, तो जनकार बीट्स लगा के रिकॉर्ड करते थे.
I'll tell you, that is why, people underestimate, globally, recording business is quite big in terms of value compared to the publishing. But, publishing, as what he gives the example of Taylor Swift, it is the fundamental of the business. It can shake your business. If you have recorded, an artist has recorded a song, and if the right belongs to the record company, it doesn't allow you to perform, allow you to release a song, you can actually create a fresh recording. Because Taylor Swift has still ability in her. She can create the same songs again, and she can do whatever she likes to the song, because she has control over her publishing rights. If you lose control over your publishing, that is why if you see most of the artists globally, actually they have started reacquiring back their publishing rights back. So you say that if I own the publishing rights, even if I don't own the masters, I can create a fresh master with my voice, and I can still give a better performance. So that is the power of publishing. Publishing can actually shake the master business.
And from a common sense point of view also, I believe the term of copyright for literary and musical works exceeds the term of a sound recording in that sense, right?
For a sound recording, the term of copyright is 60 years from the date of release of that song, from the year in which it's released. After that, 60 years. But for literary and musical work, it is actually 60 years from the death of the author, and in case of joint authors, it is the last author of that work. So, it's pretty long. In India, it is 60 years. If you go to, I think so, UK is 70 years. US is close to 95 years. So, there's been lobbying around in India that it should also be pushed up, but it's quite a long thing.
And coming back now to Mayur's point, so yes, we understand the value, and if you, to answer your question completely, you can create a recording of a Taylor Swift song, also you pay a mechanical license royalty to Taylor Swift's publisher, and you can create the same recordings as well. But the value that she brought on was that she was able to have her fan army go out and stream the Taylor's versions. So you can have your own version. The question is, do you have the army behind you to outstream Taylor Swift? And maybe BTS does. They can probably do BTS versions of Taylor songs. But coming back to the question that I had, which was on who should be paying, and when we said, a lot of people are not paying, where should they be paying? And let's take this in individual instances, and I'm going to give you instances. If you could please let me know who I should be paying, or maybe.
So before we get into that, I think it's important to understand what the rights are which need to be paid for. Okay, so we're talking about copyrights. Copyrights, actually, there are only 6 copyrights in the composition and lyrics. So the first one is that recording right that we spoke about. So once you have a composition lyric, you record it. Now, the mechanical royalty he's talking about is every time that song gets reproduced, you make copies of it, whether you're doing it on physical or whether it's going out in files on streaming services, right? Every time that recording is consumed, there is a royalty which is called a mechanical royalty, which goes to the composer and lyric writer. Okay, so the first right is the recording right, second right is the reproduction right, on which there is a payment. The third right is the sale and distribution right. Okay, so sale and distribution of the composition lyrics can be in notation. Raphael mentioned it. There are lyric websites. There used to be lyric books. Now there are lyric websites that carry lyrics. Even that is paid for. And of course, you sell and distribute the recording in which the composition lyrics is residing. Okay, so that's 3. Fourth is public performance, which is what we're going to be talking about, which is radio, television, and in establishments, when you play it in establishments and live shows. Okay, which means that it is being played to many people simultaneously. Right? You have a 1:many, and if Mayur is a writer and he's written lyrics to a song which are being played on radio, television, in establishments across the world and in live shows, how can one man go and collect all his royalties? He can't. So therefore he needs a collective which is called a performing rights organization globally. In India it is the IPRS. So IPRS will issue all the radio stations, television stations, or it will try to license them if they're not fighting, the establishments, etc. So they collect royalties from there. So that is the one-to-many principle where a society comes into play. And there's the adaptation right, translation right. You want to do the song in Tamil, you want to do it here, and the synchronization right, which is what we were talking about, where they license the song to put it in the film. So this is the bundle of copyrights that needs to be paid for. And currently in India, out of the 100 rupees that the business is earning, 85 rupees is coming from digital streaming, from your Spotify's and JioSavans and YouTubes, etc., etc. So the bulk of the money is there, but we're talking about the potential of the rest, right?
So in the case of streaming, or let's take the case of radio that Mayur first spoke about. Right now, radio stations are paying royalty to someone.
That's
right?
Rakesh's conversation.
Yeah. So they're paying royalty to someone. What are they paying? Who are they paying? Why are they not paying you? And why should they be paying you?
See, right now, radio stations are only paying to saying that, we are only using a recording. So we will only pay for the recording and we will not pay for the authors, right? That is what is the literary and musical works, right? In spite of the law changes. And because, in India, radio stations are people, those who are backed in India. I'm not too afraid to say that because, someone has been fighting with them. They are backed by people, those who are into the print media. Okay. They have the power of print media. And
all the radio stations are owned by big media houses.
And they said, okay, we are the people, those who can change laws, who can get political connections. So why do we need to pay you? We will lobby it out and delay as much as we can to pay. So radio stations do not pay us, but they only pay for the masters.
And their argument is so stupid. Their argument is that number one, first argument is that radio is a public broadcast medium. It is for people. Like the national broadcast stations, they say that they वो सरहद पे जवान सुनता है, गांव में किसान सुनता है, तो किसानों और जवानों से आप क्यों रॉयल्टी लोगे? अरे किसान और जवान तो मुफ्त में तो नहीं खाते. They pay for their तेल, आटा, साबुन, everything, right?
And if they don't, the government does.
The government does, whoever does it. Somebody is keeping them alive, right? They are not dying for whatever reasons. And if they are paying for other commodities, music is also a commodity. They should pay for it. Number one. The second, the private radio stations, their argument is that, oh, we are promoting music. Okay, fine. Mayur Puri is a new writer. He needs promotion for his song and film, and you are paying his music, and you're playing and you're not paying him. Fine, I understand. Why are you playing Mohammad Rafi's songs? Why are you playing songs of Naushad Saab? Why are you playing songs of Shankar Jaikishan and Sahir Ludhianvi? They don't need promotion. They are already dead, poor guys, right? So it's just an excuse, and it's not for free. All radio stations have their businesses. They are for-profit businesses. They have advertising. They make crores, hundreds of crores every year, right? You listen to radio. You all listen to radio. Now every 3 minutes there is an ad, isn't it? So they are making a lot of money and they are not paying us. So it's very ridiculous. There's faltu arguments they give that nahi, radios should not pay royalty to the authors. But it's just, in India it is like, agar bina diye chal sakta hai to kyun do? It's mostly it is that if I can get away without paying, it's a very big problem in Indian mentality. We think Jugaad is a nice thing. We have celebrated and we have kind of raised this whole idea of being cheap and being unethical as being very smart and very good. तो मैंने तो जुगाड़ कर लिया, मैं तो बिना पैसे दिए निकल गया. It's a very wrong mentality. You go to other countries and you travel and you see how honest people are, how honest common people are. They will not take anything for free. We Indians should also start taking pride in the fact that we do not listen to music for free. We are ready to pay for it. That sensibility is not there in people, number one, and number two, these kind of corporations, they take use of that mentality. उस mentality का वो लोग फायदा उठाते हैं, and they do all wrong kind of, they promote that thinking and that logic.
So as a consumer, let's say, now I'm coming into a live music sense, right? Today is a Diljit Dosanjh song. Day before was a Bryan Adams concert here in Goa. I'm paying for a ticket, right? So I'm paying for music. Why are you saying that I'm not paying for music, or you aren't receiving money from the ticket I'm paying for?
So what happens is, you rightly say, the consumer sometimes pays for music a lot of times for these kind of shows. There are event managers in between who manage it. They try and squeeze and say, if I can get away by not paying or giving a false declaration or paying at the lower price, or so they get away by doing that. See, because in India, you're a lawyer, the legal system is the punishment itself. The system is the punishment. Not we will get justice after 20 years, but the process is the punishment. So
simple thing, you break a law on the road, 1,000 rupees fine and 50 rupees to the cop. What will you do? What will everybody do? Right? Because you don't have a national pride. We don't have that. No, I will pay my fine, but I'll be honest. We don't have that.
One of the other excuses I've heard is we would pay the fine if we knew the money was going to be actually used for what it needs to be used for.
What I'm saying is, let us not get into the discussion. Actually, as a nationalist, let us not. We are here
for music. This is a subjective morality.
I'm saying there have been a lot of defaulters who haven't paid IPRS licenses with that reason also, right? How do I'm not afraid of taking names. Even we know some of the largest restaurant chains in India, including Impresario, refused to pay licenses to PPL and IPRS for years, saying that they were either not playing music that was represented by IPRS, or that IPRS was not paying or distributing the monies to the authors of the music that they were playing, right? So could you, and to all of us here, we're paying customers at those outlets. So in my mind, I'm thinking also I'm contributing to this industry or I'm contributing to this outlet by going there, patronizing this outlet. maybe if I knew that what this outlet was doing, I wouldn't really go there. I also want to support the industry by going to an outlet that pays for music. So maybe if you can retort.
So, Rafael, I think there are more excuses that you'll find for people not to pay than the amount of money that's collected. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, like you said, there are many excuses. One of the other factors is that the owner of the sound recording in India is also the owner of the publishing. So, when I'm paying the sound recording, why should I pay the publishing?
But that's not true in your case, right?
So, therefore, that's the reason why we need to develop the music publishing business in India, so that the rights owner of the recordings, like in the West, is different from the publishing representative, owner, representative, whatever. So when the two entities are different, then the argument doesn't hold, right? कि उसको पैसा दे दिया तो automatically it's your problem.
What I'm trying to say is that if you are saying that an organizer or somebody who says that I will pay royalty if IPRS pays royalties to the people, but I'm not sure of IPRS doing its job, that's vigilante justice. It's like I will kill the killer because I don't believe in justice. Because police अपना काम नहीं कर रही.
I will not pay income tax until I know where my money is.
Yes, unless I get healthcare for everybody, I'm not going to pay my income tax. It's as simple as that. You cannot. Your job is to pay whether the money reaches the correct people or not, which is a very valid question. I'm not saying that that's not a valid question. It's a very valid and important question. IPRS is audited 3 times a year. It should be audited. Not a problem. All the kind of we publish a transparency report. Anybody is welcome to read it. It's there on the website. We publish the transparency report. It's given to the government. It's given to all the industry people, and it's been going on happening. So we are transparent. We are doing everything compliance wise. Whatever the government is asking us to do, we are doing all of that. This is just an excuse that we don't want to pay.
So I'm sorry, Mayra, I'm going to button over here, but I think just to get the size of the problem, okay, we're talking about FM radio. There are 385 FM radio stations in India. I think 3 pay IPRS.
Yes, three.
Only 3. 18 years this case has been going on in court. There are friends of mine, ours, who are composers and writers who have died in these 18 years without money. Their families have called for help because they're in hospital. They need money because they don't get royalties from radios. There is television. There are 1,000 television stations plus cable and satellite channels. 2 networks pay IPRS. 2 networks, maybe 50 stations. Sony and Z, they pay. The rest don't pay. Is that fair? Let's come to establishments. There are 7 million restaurants and hotels in this country. Who said this? The Federation of Hotels and Restaurants. They have said there are 7 million in the organized sector and there are 23 million in the unorganized sector. How many of these, and I'm including now a much bigger licensing, licensee base. How many pay IPRS? 7,800. Our current industry collections between master and publishing is about 450 crores. We did the math. If these 7 million people, 7 million establishments paid at the current rate, we'd be earning 18,500 crores from 450. If these 23 million dhabas paid only 200 rupees a year, and in any dhaba you've had transistors playing, you've all been to dhabas where transistors used to play and now they're playing all sorts of devices. They all play music. Nobody will object to 200 rupees a year. That's equivalent to your current collections. 460 crores is what you'd get. Where is the problem? The problem is in compliance. The problem is in a government that doesn't support us. When he goes for his society re-registrations, they put all kinds of strictures and etc. so that the users can turn around and say, oh, you're not a recognized copyright society, so we won't pay you. And just a sec, same government owns something called All India Radio and Doordarshan. All India Radio has never paid composers and authors, never. But they pay IPRS to pay international composers. At that time, there is a copyright that they will pay for.
So they recently did a tribute. Yes, they recently did a tribute just yesterday to Ustad Zakir Hussain. Assuming those compositions were original compositions of his that he created, they are broadcasting a recording of Ustad Zakir Hussain, but not paying a royalty towards his compositions?
Listen, Rafael, let's not get into details. Okay, these are details. It is about your ethics, it's about your morality. You're putting pressure on an industry saying we want one window licensing because people are coming and complaining to us and saying there are 3 people who come and ask for licenses when we're having events. If you want one window licensing, you want the industry to rejig itself completely, then please help us and say we have a copyright law. This is not a law written by the music industry, this is a law written by the government of India. Saying if you play music and you don't pay, it's a criminal offense. We didn't write it, but we can't implement it, right? We can't go around arresting people. So why don't you help us in your one window licensing scheme and say it's mandatory to pay when you set up an establishment?
I think
There's a question.
Could we pass the mic? And just a few takeaways to summarize so far. Number one, we've spoken about the different types of copyright. We've spoken about the term of copyright. We've spoken about who owns the copyright and the difference between assignment and licensing. So keep these as takeaways. But what's really important, and we'll answer your question, but while navigating the music industry, it's important to acknowledge the creators first, and I think that's the next thing we want to come to, acknowledging who the creators are, because you can see the gap in understanding, right? So if we don't know who the creators are, we don't acknowledge them, we won't know if they're not paid as well. So we'll get into that part of the conversation, but I guess the takeaway here is every one of you wants to support music. You are doing your bit, but you may not know that while you are trying to support music, there's an intermediary who's trying to use your money otherwise. So ask questions. I've been to a lot of restaurants where pictures are taken of bills to see if a service charge has been charged. I've been to restaurants where people even ask for a Shops and Establishments Act registration, or they ask for a GST certificate, because if they're paying GST on the bill, they want to make sure the restaurant owner is paying GST to the government, right? They're not pocketing the GST. So why don't you also ask, do you have an IPRS license?
They won't serve you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, there's a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is actually what I'm trying to. I didn't even know. So all these shacks, let's say, along the beach, which are playing music all the time, they're supposed to pay for this music that they are blasting on the beach?
Exactly. So why are you playing music?
Yeah.
Let's get to the base of it. Why are you playing music? It entertains your customers. You're charging your customers. But the guys you're paying for the input where you're making the food, right? So why won't you pay for the music?
Right. So what
When you're
am I-
running a shack, when you're running a shack, you get fish, you get potatoes, you get chips, you pay all those vendors. With the fish and the chips and the potatoes, you're also serving music, and you're not paying this vendor.
So
Raw material में आपने म्यूजिक वाले को पे नहीं किया.
So the customer should be paying the established, because I pay.
Customer is already paying. Customer, आप तो you can't eat free at a shack, right? You have to pay.
No, but I'm not paying for the music that I'm listening.
But you're not paying separately for different things. You're not paying for each thing on the.
No. So the thing is that the law says that the establishment that is playing the music is responsible for paying. The customer is not involved. The customer is feeding their business anyway. They are supposed to take a license.
Yeah, so see, this is what I mean. This awareness does not exist. I mean,
That's
I
why-
would
that's
like
why we
to
do these
pay-
workshops.
Yeah, I would like to pay creators. I mean, if I'm going to pay a really badly made for a badly made meal, at least the good music that's attracting me, I would much rather pay for that.
No, but don't worry. We are balancing it. We are creating really bad music as well.
Yeah, and my next question after all this is going to be, or towards the end at some point, if you can, I don't understand is copy left. What is copy left, and is it the same as open source? If I would just like to.
Yeah.
So this is a made up term.
I like
the way
we are answering the question with the lawyer sitting.
Can we come to copyleft in a bit?
Later.
I want to actually advocate for something, which is
Okay.
you have AC and non-AC restaurants, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I was just wondering whether there's a way to flip the business model and to actually charge the consumer directly in the way that you'd have a service charge, you kind of have a music charge that then,
Yeah.
that.
So let me put it this way.
And if it's just 200 rupees, it could actually
So-
be like a couple of rupees.
Well,
for
200
people.
rupees to the unorganized sector,
Yeah,
but
well, I mean,
yeah,
the
but
point being that you kind of
you
pass
see-
this on directly to the consumer.
correct. So this is the whole point, and we've been trying to make suggestions to the government, saying that this is a way in which we can do it. We are not closed. We are saying pay for it because we firmly believe that this 3,500 crore industry that we are in today genuinely is a 25,000 crore industry. And where people cannot, independent artists, you all support independent artists, I'm sure you're all listening to their music. Those poor guys really don't make enough money to earn a living, to sustain themselves. But if we were to push the needle, right, and make it to that 25,000 crores, everyone would make a decent amount of money. That's really where we're going with this.
I'm advocating for, you have AC and non-AC sections in restaurants. I'm advocating for music and non-music sections in restaurants as well, because that's how you can really see the difference. You're not paying for the AC separately. You're not paying the AC company or the electricity company separately for an AC section. You're paying the restaurant. The restaurant is invested in the AC, or the restaurant's paying for the electricity. That's what they should do with music as well. We have a question there.
Does the same logic apply to folk songs and devotional songs?
It should, but
Rakesh, maybe.
I'll tell you, folk songs can be out of copyright unless they have been recreated, but devotional music is not always free because it's not always traditional music. You can say Om Jai Jagdish Hare is devotional and it is traditional, no. But the moment you say Shirdi Wale Sai Baba was created specifically for Amar Akbar Anthony, or if you say Kabhi Ram ban ke, Kabhi Sham ban ke ghar chale aana, Hanuman Chalisa is traditional. It is out of copyright.
But the lyrics are
But
traditional, but the composition.
what happens is, but when you make a composition, as you said rightly say, when you make a Hanuman Chalisa, people sing it in different styles and you have a different arrangement and a composition along with it. So the lyrics are free out of copyright, but the composition still is in copyright.
So it's
and most of the devotional songs, the recent ones which you hear, a lot of them are freshly created.
So
They are
this is one of the copyrights we were talking about. It's called an adaptation. And adaptation means where you're changing a composition or a lyric or both, right? So what happens is that when you record a song, see, there are two parts to the business. If you record a traditional work, a folk song or a devotional song which is out of copyright, your sound recording has copyright for 60 years, which is what he mentioned, right? So the recording of even a folk song is in copyright for the recording. But for the composition and lyric, if it's playing in public, it is actually not payable. But when you're doing that recording and you're going to register it, there is something called an arrangement, which is basically what the adaptation is about. You're changing something. So when you're changing something, the person who's changing it is either a composer or a writer. They get credited with part of the composition. Part of it is traditional, like he said, the lyrics of something could be changed or retained. So the new creator gets a certain percentage in the composition. So it's two different things. So that's why when people talk about devotional music not being copyrighted when you're performing it, perhaps correct, perhaps, right? I wouldn't say everything, but definitely in a recording, it is copyrightable.
See,
Teach this stuff in schools.
we are going
We're
everywhere.
trying, we're
We
trying.
do 50 events a year.
We're trying.
We go everywhere and we are trying.
I thought this was a school.
I do it all the time.
Teaching that schools from the ground up.
I think
Kids, once they learn, and they're the ones actually who steal the maximum music, because sometimes they don't even know they're stealing.
That is exactly what we were saying. That is why I give the example of a class teacher. When you're writing your exams in the school, copyright starts from there. If we ingrain it in the child there itself, he knows about it.
we have a question here as well.
But one second. Something wrong with this mic. No, we are asking the government to help us or asking the industry players to help us with the minimum basic which is already written in the law. We are just asking for compliance. 10% of that is not happening. Where will change the education system in this country? It's very difficult. I'm saying I don't want to be idealistic and I don't want to fight battles that I cannot win at all. right? I would rather fight battles which I can make some difference in my lifetime. I can make some changes, right? I don't want to follow or pursue a goal which is so beautiful but also so unattainable right now. So that is one reason.
If I could frame that in
Yeah.
a different way and
This mic is
retort it partially, I would say you do what you're doing so that you receive royalties during your life, but you educate those children so that you receive royalties after your life.
No, but one thing I will say is that, so when we were in school, right, we did art class, you learned how to draw, so it's of certain value because you learn to draw within lines and all that. Then from class 8 onwards, we were given chart paper made to cut it and make baskets. Nobody I know from my batch, my friends, etc., has ever made baskets out of chart paper, right, in their grown life. So why don't we teach music, not music to learn how to be a musician, but music appreciation at the school level. We tell them what is Indian classical music, what are 10 thoughts, how many rags have come out of them, what are these rags, what is traditional music, non-traditional music. जो सुर में गा रहा है, and this I have a big problem with today, right? वो जो सुर में गाता है वो क्यों सिंगर होता है और जो सुर में नहीं गाता है वो सिर्फ स्टार बनता है, नहीं वो सिर्फ स्टार बनता है. So you have to have an appreciation of the arts. You learn sketching and drawing, you appreciate a good painting. If you learn about music, you'll appreciate people who are doing it well. Where was the question?
Yeah, you rightly said, ma'am, with this session and with Serendipity taking it forward, been live streaming it, we would ask them, that this goes across to multiple people and they understand how music is and how they can be a part in the value chain.
Yeah, no.
Even bigger ramifications actually, because the minute you start teaching it in schools and people start appreciating this, that you have to pay for creativity, then the whole balance will shift, where right now everything is STEM, and you only make money if you're an engineer or an entrepreneur.
They don't make money.
No. Because these
comedians.
guys, creative people don't make money because there is no appreciation of the money, the untapped money potential that they are not getting paid for. So the whole thing would flip if you went into schools and actually worked from the ground up to say, this is the money that you are supposed to be making, and then parents will also instead of saying, "Arey, ye gana bajana band karo, ye karo." After class 8, they will say, "Ye sab karo and get your money for it." So I think it's very important at a very basic grassroots level, and you are the guys who have to do it actually.
Everyone has to do it.
No,
Yeah, but you have to. I didn't even know. I think of myself
Now you
as
know.
very,
Yeah.
very.
This is the train the trainers version.
matlab we are. Sorry, there was a question there.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to know that whenever we pay for memberships like Spotify Premium and all, do artists get paid through
Yes,
that?
I was going to tell you, I was actually going to answer her, and that would answer your question also. That, of course, you are telling us what we can do, and believe me, we are doing whatever we can, but probably more than that. But I understand that there has to be a sea change in the attitude of the people and the society at large. That's why I don't want to blame a music company. I don't want to blame a subscription service. I don't want to blame these big companies. They are for profit companies. It's their job to make profit. So they will they will behave in a particular way. What I want is to change the mindset of people in this country. That is a bigger change, and that is more important. Simple thing that you can do is you can subscribe to two platforms, because subscription money is easier. The access that an artist has from a subscription account is higher and better and more transparent than we have from a freemium model. There's a friend of ours who did a study in Indonesia mein Irfan Oli hai na? Indonesia mein, right? So he did the whole study, and he showed us actually the numbers that when there is more subscription, the platform can pay the artist much better and more transparent. Exactly which money is going to which artist is much better than a freemium model, because a freemium model, then they have to rely on advertising, and then If freemium is not good, just get subscription and pay for it, because that's better for the artist.
So you are supporting in a certain sense, but we're talking about. She asked about artists. You also mentioned artists. Are the songwriters receiving their money?
Songwriters are artists. Oh, that's another problem. This is what I'm fighting with major subscription services, is that songwriters should be recognized as primary artists. We are creators. We are song creators. Can you remember a single song without the words? Can you tell anybody वो वाला गाना सुना है, कौन सा गाना? वर्ड ही बोलना पड़ेगा. आप सोनू निगम का परफॉर्म करके तो नहीं दिखा पाओगे, क्योंकि वो एक ही है सोनू निगम, करेक्ट? तो आपको वर्ड ही बोलना पड़ेगा. मेरा वर्ड्स आप कॉपी कर सकते हो, आप किसी को भी बोल सकते हो तेरी और सुना है, सेल्फी ले ले रे सुना है, सबको पता चल जाएगा. मेरा काम ऐसा है, मैं दे रहा हूं आप लोग को, आप ये वर्ड्स लो और सब जगह फैला दो, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. बट वी शुड बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एज प्राइमरी आर्टिस्ट बिकॉज वी आर.
So, does that also answer your question in terms of, and I think this is primarily what I was getting at earlier, and I'm glad you brought it up, because if the creators themselves are not, we see the artist, right? We've traditionally as an industry, we've not even seen the artist actually. We've seen someone on a screen lip syncing a song sung by someone else. So now is the age where the artist is coming forward. You see the artist as a primary artist. With bringing the lyricists and the composers, the creators of the song into the forefront, into the spotlight, I think that's also a step where people will question, who are these people? And then next year when we do this again, you will ask, are the writers receiving money from Spotify, right? So I think that's also a change in acknowledgement, in crediting, and I believe Rakesh at IPRS there was the credit the creator.
Yes, I was just going to talk about that. That we started this whole movement called Credit the Creators, and it's there on Twitter, on X now, on Facebook, on all the platforms. You can go and you can check out. You can just check out the hashtag Credit the Creators. In fact, on YouTube we made a very nice song. All the lyricists got together and made a song called Credit De Do Yaar. It's a very funny song. You should see that video. You'll really enjoy it. It's hilarious. Swanand Bhai is there. I am there. Samir Saab is there. Lots of us. Varun is there. Kausar Munir is there. All of us lyricists we put together and we made this song. It's a very funny, very cute song saying, "Yaar, credit de do humko credit chahiye." So what I want you all to do is that when you see a song and when you like it on any platform, check out who's written it, who's sung it, who's the composer. And if you find any credit missing, or if you see that the name is not correct or there's some problem, please tag that particular platform, please tag that particular broadcaster, because it's their responsibility to give this data. It is their responsibility. As per the law, I'm not asking any favors. This is what the law says, that when you will broadcast a work of art, you will also tell people who is the creator behind that art. It's your responsibility of the broadcaster. And if they're not doing it, tag them, call them out. हम लोग को तो ऑफेंस लेना कितना अच्छा लगता है ना, हम लोग ऑफेंस कल्चर में ही जी रहे. इस पे ऑफेंस लो ना, ये बहुत अच्छा मुद्दा है, इस पे ऑफेंस लेना बहुत अच्छा है. प्लीज टेक ऑफेंस, प्लीज गेट ऑफेंडेड व्हेन लिरिसिस्ट्स आर नॉट क्रेडिटेड anywhere.
I was going to say
composers,
that, I was going to say the next takeaway is please get offended, but I would rather say the takeaway is, if you see something, say something, right? If you don't see something, say something. Here, I think another takeaway is we spoke about Atul mentioned the 6 rights within copyright, right? And we spoke about the economic side of things, where it is these rights can be monetized. What's really important is the other side, which is the moral rights. These are rights that you can't give away. As a creator, you're born, and once the creation is born with, I would say, maybe it's not the best example, but your moral rights are your unseen umbilical cord between you and your work, and that umbilical cord, mind you, stays with the work for life. It's supposed to stay on where you are identified as the author for life, right? When we so that's also something that you should take away from this discussion. There was one more question, I think, there.
Yeah, just to begin with saying that you can't really change the world. You just have to change yourself and then just hope for the best. But as a musician, and like I want to start releasing my music, I've always had questions about whether you can cover other music on and like post it on YouTube of sorts. And do DJs like with the upcoming era of electronic and DJs playing at restaurants, do restaurants also Like, do DJs have to pay a fee of sorts to, you know, make remixes as producers also of original songs? Because I see a lot of bedroom DJs posting stuff on Instagram of their new remixes of this song, and I wonder if they've actually gotten permission to make that, because those remixes are getting very popular and trendy, and those are the audios that are trending amongst the crowds. So are they paying a fee or not? Because I've been to sessions like these before, and I always ask questions. I've never actually gotten clarity about it, because they're like, okay, India is the least paying Spotify consumer.
Well, thank you for asking those questions, and thank you for asking this question also. But keep asking those questions at every gig. Maybe Rakesh, if you could answer on the DJ side.
He's the
And
lawyer. You're the lawyer. You bloody answer it.
I've never gotten clarity.
Yeah,
even.
you're not just the
See, first I'll answer it from a commercial aspect, then the lawyer can correct it, and these industry veterans. You know, legally, if you're saying when the DJ plays music in a restaurant or in any place, when he is mixing it live, officially that's happening on the spot, so no offense, this takes place. And as long as the restaurant or that place has a license or that event has a license, it goes through. But the movement officially, if he does mixing and he creates a new sound recording of it, legally he cannot do that without a permission of the original content owner. If he does that, you know, but some content owner can actually sue him. Or what's happening in today's age, now what you said, no? The reverse has started happening. The content owners, what they do is, okay, I like this content. They tell the DJ, you made this, unless you put it on YouTube or on a platform or on a Meta, I will monetize this and let us share this revenue. Otherwise, I will take this content down. So, you know, a lot of band like Sanam has got actually very popular because, you know, he does only covers. He re-sings all those old songs, which the new audiences, the new generation love to hear that with the new beats and with the new orchestration. What does it do? He has tied up with most of the big companies to say that, okay, I'm making this, you will share, let us share the revenues. Rather than you strike down my channel, let us share revenues. So he indirectly takes a permission from the content owner.
I have a question, Rakeshji. On Instagram, I've seen, say for example, there is an old song of Mohammad Rafi composed by Naushad, the lyrics by Shakil Badayuni, and now some new singer, say Vishal Mishra, is singing it in a reel, and 1.5 minute ka reel bana ke he's uploading it, but he's uploading it as original audio.
yeah, may I answer that one?
What happens in that scenario?
So, and to answer your question as well, there's something called UGC today, user generated content, right? That's all of us who have social media accounts. We are using music that we find in the libraries up there, or that we're able to download and add to our videos, add to a background and upload it to our stories, reels, posts, so on and so forth. Earlier, you going back to what Rakesh said, none of us can do this without the permission of the copyright owner. But what these platforms have done is they've realized, okay, there are so many users now. How do we get these users to actually get permission and create more content? We need to keep the wheels of our content engine, our social media platform running, and it's going to run better when there's more content available in the libraries to our users. And so they come around and they say, Atul, you've got some great songs. Here I'm going to pay you a license fee upfront, or I'm going to pay you per usage. Every time someone uses your song in a reel, I'm going to pay you a royalty on that. And they strike these deals at the back end. Now, if we had robust knowledge and education that this was happening, right, you'd be like, okay, someone's getting compensated in the background. Today, we don't know that these deals have been done. So we're not even thinking, hey, am I using someone's work? Do I need permission? Don't I need permission? So I'll give you an example also. Facebook has, let's say, done a deal with IPRS, and let's say YouTube has done a deal with IPRS also. TikTok says no, right? TikTok says we won't license music. So you've uploaded your reel onto Instagram, you've uploaded your reel onto YouTube Shorts, and you think it's okay because it's up on YouTube and it's up on Instagram. You think it's okay, so you upload your reel onto TikTok as well, but it gets taken down on TikTok, or your audio goes mute on TikTok. Why? I don't think we think today, oh, we needed someone's permission or someone's going to get paid on the basis of this, right? So user generated content has become this big sort of excuse for do whatever you want. And now platforms, and I've actually documented a lot of this and passed it on to some members of the IPRS team also for negotiations with Meta. Original audio, what's happening is all of these social media platforms have something that identifies what song. They have a technology, content recognition, music recognition technology. YouTube has something called Content ID that recognizes when someone uploads a song into their system, they recognize what that song is, or they try to recognize what that song is. Now, the moment you create this remix, let's say you take a really popular song, you change the tempo, you put into an editing software and change something about it. You change the pitch, you change the tempo, and then you upload it in. 7 times out of 10 on a Meta, it goes up as original audio. And if we were to all sing out loud a Beatles song in this room and we put it up on IPRS's Instagram story also, and we're all singing, we all know we're singing a Beatles song. But 10 times out of 10, Facebook is not going to recognize that it's a Beatles song because it doesn't know how to recognize melody, it doesn't know how to recognize the lyrics and the composition today. So the moment and you'll see this with all your dance influencers, and we've seen this with all of the IPRS repertoire. This is what platforms will when they come to pay Atul the license the next time, they'll say, Atul, but we negotiated the license on the basis of 100 people are using it in Reels, but it's actually only 2 people using it in Reels, so they'll give you 2% the amount the next time they come around. But what's actually happening is all of these original audio tags. So again, when you see something like this, you know the song, you definitely know the song, report it. Make sure they identify, or you mention in the comments, you mention in the support section what song it is, and that will get their content ID system to pick it up and tag it. Make sure that the artists get paid, the copyright owners get paid, and the lyricists and the creators, composer creators get paid.
So it's not all doom and gloom, and it's not all your responsibility. So so Raphael's been part of it, Mayur and Rakesh have been part of it, but what we're trying to do as an industry, as a country, is to first standardize metadata. So when you put music into a platform, the guys who are uploading it could be labels, it could be artists who are releasing their own music. Globally, there are identifiers which are like your Aadhaar number. They are unique to the person or the entity. So the composer and writer has something called an IPI, which also a publisher has. A recording has an ISRC. A work, a composition and lyric has an ISWC, and a performer has an IPN. Okay, so these are all individual numbers that establish what that person is doing, what his role is. And if you have all these plotted in your metadata when you upload the music, then you will be able to identify. And just for you to know, today there are 28 million songs in the world that have been paid for, sitting in copyright societies where the society doesn't know whom to pay. Because it's I Love You by John Smith. How many John Smiths? How many I Love Yous? How do you recognize which John Smith and which I Love You, right? So if you put these identifiers in place, it'll happen, and we are attempting to do it, and Raphael helped in creating a document that is going to come out under the Bureau of Indian Standards, which we are hoping to adopt, so that anyone who's using music can get certified saying that we are using these identifiers. So that's the first thing. And now we are moving towards mandatory scrubbing, call it fingerprinting, calling whatever you're calling it, content ID for YouTube. Other people have other systems. But again, through the BIS, we are hoping that we'll create a standard so that any time a piece of music goes up, it's able to be, we can catch it, we can tag it, and like we say, set a thief to catch a thief. Because if AI is going to spew out the shit, then we use AI to do the fingerprinting as well, so that those remixes that Raphael's talking about all get identified and then get tagged to the correct metadata. And India we took the lead in doing this. The UK has also done it. We are the only 2 countries in the world that are actually doing this whole metadata standardization. So there's a lot of good stuff that's going to come of it. Now can you imagine this music industry, which is currently 3,500 crores? If we get to our 18,500 crores only on public performance, if we get radio, television and the other guys to pay, and we correct our metadata and fingerprinting, I think personally this industry is at least a 50,000 crore industry. We power films. Films are much bigger than us. We power radio. Radio is bigger than us. We power television, the DSPs. We are much bigger than them. So we are working towards it, and people have to understand that yes, there's a responsibility that Raphael was pointing out. If you see something wrong, flag it, tag it, right? People like him will come in. And also events, right? You do so many events. Please make it mandatory. Every time an artist manager comes in and he's fighting with you about getting a fee, tell him, first you show me your set list, I have to send it to IPRS. Fuck everything else, because the right composers need to get paid.
And shout out to IPRS for putting this panel together and Serendipity for hosting it. Serendipity has got a huge focus on intellectual property. It has over the years, and this year there's not 1 but 2 panels on intellectual property. There's one that's happening right now, and this Saturday right here again at around 4:30 or so. But yes, you had a question, I think, Vinay.
Yes, am I audible? Thanks, guys, for doing this. Firstly, I'll request my social media team to put a disclaimer that it is for 18 and plus.
Or you can mute one word.
I don't know, it's live streaming. And secondly, we do check the list, but the question was that since we are not charging anybody for the demonstration or the presentation or the artistic expression, do we still pay the licenses?
So, go ahead.
Generally what happens is, as long as any event, anyone uses music, the only thing which is exempted in the law is that if you're using it inside your residence or your residential premises, or if you're using it inside a school or inside your political parliament. Other than that, everyone needs a license to play music. Now that license can be for a value, or it can be for a discounted value, or it can be free as a support. But yes, it requires a license to play music.
You can take apples from somebody's orchards and give it free to people, but they are not your apples. To give it free also, you are giving free, but they're not your apples. They're somebody else's apples. You got to have an understanding with that person that, okay, give me apples at a discounted rate. Let us work out something. I'm going to give it free. I'm going to do it for free for people. And it's a good thing that I'm doing. And sure, you are doing a good thing, but those apples are not yours.
But I'm paying for the apples.
No, music. I'm saying license, copyright.
No. So what I'm trying to say is that.
So you have to buy the license. You cannot not buy the license. That's what I'm saying. That your question was, if I'm giving it free, do I still need to pay for it? Of course, you got to pay for it.
So let me put it.
Rephrase that, and we'll do it after.
Let me put it.
That's what you said exactly.
No, let me put it in context, Minal. Also, I'll just put it in another context, right? Facebook is free, right? We don't allow Facebook to use music and allow its users to use music for free because Facebook is free. Now, essentially, it is whether now there's let's say even if Facebook were a not-for-profit, right? We can argue that IKEA is a not-for-profit in that sense. No, it is. They're a trust at the back of it. So Tata is also a not-for-profit with Tata and Son. Okay, now let me not go into. Sorry, let me not go into that. But as a copyright holder, right? Think of it this way. It's not about you. It's about me as a copyright holder, right? Why am I creating? When we spoke about you asked about devotional music and you spoke about folk music as well, right? Think about devotional music and think about the progression of devotional music. If you want to see the next range of devotional music, if you want to see the next round or the next development in folk music, you need to incentivize the creators. If you talk about folk music today, you'll notice that more than 80% of the folk musicians are performers. They're no longer writing anymore. The tradition of the patron of the Gharana funding the Gharana is gone. So most folk artists in villages or performing at folk festivals today are performing something that's in the public domain. If you don't incentivize the creation, then they have no need to create. You'll have no new folk songs. Devotional music. I go to church sometimes, but maybe I'll go more if I didn't know all the songs in the church. If I didn't know all the mantras, if I didn't know all the bhajans, maybe I'd listen and be like, okay, that's a new one. They did a survey 2018. The Ganpati Pandal that had the most amount of people was the one which played Nuclear's Ganesh Aarti, right? At least in Bombay. So and again, that's an example of an event where they're not charging people, but it is, I think, ingrained in your purpose should be, all right, we've got a lot of performers here, but are the performers the creators? And are we incentivizing or are we supporting the creators? And once you ask yourself that question and once you answer that question, I think that's it. Then you'll make the decision of whether you need a license, whether you take a license or not.
No, we always take a license. No. Thanks, Rakesh, for that.
Also about this
But
whole
I think,
devotional thing, it's we have double standards in that also. So I've written 3 songs on Ganpati, okay?
मैं वही बोलने वाला था. I think the major aspect of the inclusion should be you.
Yeah, so I've written 3 songs. I've written Shambhu Sutaya, I've written Gaga Gaga Ganpati, which is also very famous, and Hey Ganraya for ABCD2. So these 3 songs, and मेरे घर से गणपति प्रोसेशन निकलता है, और बिकॉज मेरे घर के पास में घाट है बॉम्बे में, तो वो विसर्जन के लिए जाते हैं. तो दे स्टार्ट विद शंभू सुताया मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स. बीच में कहीं पे गगा गगा गणपति आता है. 3 बिल्डिंग के बाद में 4 बोतल वोडका, काम मेरा रोज का. माय पॉइंट इज, ठीक है, आप बोल रहे हो मयूरपुरी, तुमने भक्ति भाव से गणपति के लिए 3 गाना लिखा, तुमने भक्ति भाव से लिखा, तुमको संसार से विरक्ति होनी चाहिए, तुमको पैसे का मोह नहीं रखना चाहिए, तुमको पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे, ठीक है, फाइन. मैं बोलता हूं मुझे मत दो रॉयल्टी, कोई बात नहीं, लेकिन हनी पाजी ने तो भक्ति भाव से 4 बोतल वोडका नहीं लिखा है, उसने तो पैसा कमाने के लिए लिखा है, उसको तो रॉयल्टी दे दो. You understand what I'm saying? So we have double standards about religious functions also. We include marriages also in religious now. So हम लोग बोलते शादी के लिए भी लाइसेंस नहीं ले सकते. Associated events. शादी से 1 दिन पहले कॉकटेल पार्टी हो रही है, 2 दिन पहले संगीत हो रहा है. सब म्यूजिक, हमारा म्यूजिक ही बजता है, हमारे ही गाने बजते हैं.
So my favorite one on that is my divorce party is also associated with my marriage, isn't it?
उसका लाइसेंस लेना पड़ेगा आपको. You are already paying for it. Okay. So my thing is, अगर एक पंडित आता है शादी के लिए और वो 2 रुपए का सुपारी रखता है उधर और बोलता है ये गणपति बैठे 101 रुपए रखो, तो आप 101 रुपए, वो 2 रुपए का सुपारी, आपको मालूम है ये 2 ही रुपए का सुपारी है, लेकिन बट यू स्टिल पे 100 रुपीज बिकॉज नाउ इट इज दैट सुपारी हैज बिकम गणपति मैजिकली बिकॉज द पंडित हैज प्लेस्ड इट. 2 रुपए का फूल फ्री नहीं आता है शादी में. व्हाट इज फ्री इन मैरिज? नथिंग. ओनली म्यूजिक इज फ्री. वी आर सेलिब्रेटिंग ऑल द मैरिजेस इन इंडिया फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट.
So
us creators, we don't get paid. Everybody else gets paid. It's a party for everyone except us.
I'm just mindful of the time. I think we've gone over, and
just
I know
one question. So like we understood the power of IP rights. So who are the holders of IP rights in the music industry, and to whom does the royalty go back to? So there are singers, there are like lyricists, composers, musicians, producers, sound engineers. So they are all creating, but who holds the IP rights and who gets the royalties?
In music, especially in music, as per the Copyright Act, Copyright exists in literary work. Literary work means the person who has written the lyrics, especially for music. So he will get his royalty. Second is the composer. He has composed the music. He's made the tunes. The music composer is eligible for royalty. Third is someone who creates the recording of that. So the person who creates the recording, for the recording owner, he can be the music label, the music company, he gets his right. We have got even now the performer's right, which has also come into play. So performers also, when their sound recording is played, they also get right. So when music is played live, especially, you only need to take a license for literary and musical works from IPRS or the publishers. When you're playing recorded music, both gets triggered. The rights in the literary musical works get triggered and the rights in the recording also get triggered. The third is, which is recently the government has introduced, that if you're playing a cinematographic film anywhere, you need to pay the royalties to authors and composers because background music is being played also there. The only exception is that when a film is being shown inside a cinema hall, you don't need to take a license for that because that is exempt, that is controlled by the government. And last to say, what everyone has said, see the power of music what India has. We had recently Raj Kapoor's 100th anniversary celebrating, and the Kapoor family did meet the Prime Minister, and we said that okay, India is known for its songs, and whenever we go to Russia or to Turkey, people identify, okay, Raj Kapoor's songs. Actually, it is the songs. You identify it with the character, but actually Awara is written by or done by Shankar Jaikishan, which is actually known by throughout the world. So that is the soft power of music. Everything will go. Your creations will only remain, I believe. You still remember a Mirza Ghalib. You still remember a Tulsidas. You still remember a Kabir. All of them be there because literary work can be carried out towards hundreds of years together for you.
So I think
Last question you want to take?
I still haven't gotten any clarity, and I have so many questions. Where can I go to find answers to them? Because I will come back on Saturday if I.
For today, we're here for 15 minutes after the sessions are.
Is it all
But
You can follow us on Insta or Twitter, and I reply to my DMs in 48 hours. Whichever question in 48 hours I reply.
But IPRS
He's
has,
also there,
yeah.
Rakesh ji, so we are all on Instagram.
And there's been webinars.
So follow
I
IPRS
am,
on our
I don't-
social
I don't-
media pages.
I would actually really like to,
reply
even if you
in
allow.
writing. Huh?
As a singer-songwriter, I kind of want to know step by step what I can do to protect myself from the very beginning, and not like
That will require a session, ma'am. That is not.
exactly. So
We will not get in this kind of a session.
So
So require an individual session.
IPRS
Lawyers will make money. Yeah? How are you different?
No, but IPRS has recorded a couple of webinars that are on their YouTube pages, on their Facebook page. One is specifically on before you get to the recording. Once you get to the recording, and you all had done one with Meta that is post release as well. IPRS YouTube and on the Facebook page. Facebook page for sure because it was an event in partnership with Facebook. But yes, there are also a lot of resources that you will find on the IPRS page itself. And for anything else, we keep posting about this. We're doing once a week. We're doing a session like this somewhere or the other. So. Not all of us together, but
in various combinations.
Yes. But I think on a closing note, I would say if you see something or you don't see something, say something. But if you want to incentivize yourself further, we were joking about this earlier. There are 2 music companies that are listed on the stock exchange, and their stock's doing really, really well right now. Saregama and Tips. Buy shares, even if you buy one share of each of those companies, and when you wonder why there's no growth or there's no profit in the next quarter, then you go to the restaurants and you tell them pay those licenses because your share value will go up. If you do this yourself, don't do it for the creators, don't do it for the industry, just do it for yourself as a shareholder. I think we'll end on that note. Thank you to Serendipity, thank you to IPRS, thank you to all the panelists.
Organizing this. Thanks.
Thank you to the audience.
Thank you, panelists, for this incredible conversation. Thank you. Thank you, India Performing Rights Society, for facilitating this. Thank you so much, audience, for being so incredible.
Thank you, Serendipity.